All right, look at that Tuesday afternoon, downtown Detroit shot from our Windsor cam, and the ice on the Detroit River. You might say, is it only Tuesday? I say it is only Tuesday because the Lions hype machine is just getting started. We are counting down to the game on Sunday. It has been such a great time to finally be a Lions fan here in the city of Detroit. So we have devoted the second half of the Daily Plus Live to the Lions Kool-Aid Corner here, which is our essential version of sports talk radio streaming right here on Local 4 Plus. And it really kind of encapsulates, I think, the conversations that are happening in all of our workplaces right now. Everyone seems to know a little something more about the Lions and become experts. So let me take you to our experts right now. Of course, Derek Hutchinson is leading the charge from clickondetroit.com. There's Ken Haddad, Wave Ken. Of course, Jamie Edmonds and Ben Bell back here. All right, guys, I'm going to leave it to you, and with the hopes that maybe Dan Campbell can come into all of our workplaces and give us a pep talk.
Yeah. We're switching it up today. We brought in somebody who knows what they're talking about, too. So get things straightened up here. So.
Well, it takes a woman sometimes.
Yeah. It's funny, Jamie, when you've covered the Lions for a long time, and those press conferences that they do like 3 times a week, it's like, Dan Campbell has a press conference, whatever. And then you make that NFC Championship game, and it's like, oh, press conference. Like, we got to dive into this, right?
Well, I know they're a lot busier.
Yeah, that's
than they've
right.
ever been before. A lot of bloggers, a lot of different people coming in to hear what the Lions have to say because they're America's team.
The room gets a little more crowded during the playoffs. Yeah. All right, the first quote we have from Dan Campbell is about his quarterback and his ability to step up during big moments.
It's the way he's made. It's just, I think that's one of those traits that I believe he learned over time. Probably some of it. I don't know. Maybe his father. Maybe it started there. Just his experience, his time playing the game at a high level in big games, understanding, what's coming next. But he does do a great job with it, and he does stay calm. He does stay cool, and he knows even if it feels a little shaky, a little rocky, it'll smooth out. It'll smooth out. You just keep playing ball. But it's one of the reasons why he's able to play at a high level. It's one of the reasons he had a fourth quarter like he did yesterday, because of what you just said. He can just hang in there, and he'll get in a rhythm. He'll start finding some throws and get hot for us.
Ben, you rode the Jared Goff roller coaster this year, the ups and downs. It's funny because exactly 2 months to the date before the Buccaneers game, Jared Goff was booed off the field against the Bears, right?
Right.
And now, 2 weekends in a row at Ford Field, they're chanting his name as he leads us to playoff wins. So, what can you say about Jared Goff and his journey this season?
It's like watching a movie play out. It's awesome. I mean, the guy is just thrown in that trade. We all know the story about how the trade went down. And for this guy to resurrect his career and then you get to the point where the crowd is cheering Jared Goff, and you see the way he's playing at such an elite level, it really is awesome to watch. This is the best storyline, one of the best storylines in the NFL this year, and I appreciate seeing this whole thing play out rather than us just get like a Baker Mayfield and then just kind of get over the hump with like somebody that we don't really care too much about. But the fact that it's Jared Goff, this city has gotten behind him, and it's just this story plot line playing out, and I hope we have a happy ending, and I hope it ends the way we all want it to. I'm just so happy for him. Like, who can't look at Jared Goff and what he's done and just want to give him an applause, because it's awesome the way it's played out.
Ben had to get one more Baker Mayfield shot in there. What did you think about Goff the last 2 weeks?
Man, he's put the mission of representing the city and breaking the stigma around the playoffs around here. He just put it all on his back, and he owned it. And he's been walking around saying, like, let's get this for the city, 3-1-3. He has bought into the vision of winning and that purpose of giving Detroit a winner. And he's going to be remembered for that.
Yeah,
for sure.
Jamie, early in the season, people were talking about extending Jared Goff, making him one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league. And then he had that stretch of turning the ball over, and everybody was like, maybe Hendon Hooker should get a look.
Which
and
is
now
a ridiculous sentiment. The man has not played any NFL football yet.
Yeah, so when you just look at his season as a whole, how do you view it?
I always thought Detroiters were a little tough on Jared Goff. I mean, I think he's a great quarterback. I think when Brad Holmes brought him in, he did not look at him like a bridge quarterback. He knew he had this in him, and Jared Goff recently said that Dan Campbell's like the greatest leader he's ever played for, and Jared Goff in turn is playing his best football of his career. I think you pay him. I think he's Detroit's quarterback. He's done something that hasn't been done in a really long time. He won a playoff game. He's taken them to the NFC Championship game. What more do you want from this man?
Division title, like they were great.
Plus, off the field, you talk about Jared Goff. He quietly does things for the community.
Yeah.
He includes Detroit kids in designing sweatshirts and things.
Yeah.
He's a good guy. He's winning games. What more do you want?
Exactly. Yeah. Maybe not a coincidence that Jared Goff's playing his best football under a coach that he actually kind of relates
Exactly.
to. Ben, when you were watching the Buccaneers game, I think we thought the Lions were going to try to establish a run. They had their running backs this time against the Bucs, unlike last time. But really, they asked Jared Goff to win this game with his arm, didn't they?
A little bit, and they really had to rely on the defense. I think when the defense plays complementary to Jared Goff, that's when we're at our best. And our defense is never going to be San Francisco's defense, but we have just enough to complement Goff. And I think with the run game, it's just all working so well. And how many yards did Goff have? He's always got like
287, I believe.
Yeah, I feel like that's every game.
Yeah.
He lands right at that mark. But the guy just steps up in big moments and delivers when we need him the most. Him and Amon-Ra St. Brown are like the two biggest winners I've ever seen.
Lots of chemistry there.
Yes, play on. I mean, just think about that third down that Amon-Ra caught.
The third and 14?
He had to
Yes.
fight for a couple. I've never seen Lions receivers, as great as Calvin Johnson was, he never made those type of plays, those winning plays. At
Nobody
the end of a game.
nobody ever runs out of bounds. When Lions receiver catches the ball, they're trying to go.
Yeah.
They're not like, oh, let me just run out of bounds here and call it a play.
Right.
Like they're like, I'm staying in
They're not
bounds. You
taking
better
the
take
easy
me
route.
down.
And that's all grit. It's all toughness.
Yeah.
That Dan Campbell, and it all comes
Brock
from
Wright
Dan
had
Campbell.
one of those last game where he caught it. He could have easily gone out of bounds, but he just juked a guy and ran like 25 more yards.
How bad is his injury? Because I really
Not playing bad.
Yeah, not
That's why they brought in Ertz, I think. Right?
I love having Brock Wright in there. I think he's such a good complementary tight end to our offense, and he's just always making big plays.
Yeah.
And it just
Well, he left the game in a sling.
I know.
You
And I
enjoy
just
Zach
hate
Ertz
seeing him
as a
injured.
complimentary tight end.
You guys are jumping the rundown a little bit. We'll get to
Hey, maybe
injuries
Hendon
later,
Hooker
but-
could play tight end.
Yeah, you love him so much.
I wanted to leave the golf conversation on this. We've all heard the stat Padford thing. Remember
Yes.
that?
Yeah,
When Matt
yeah.
Stafford was here, it seemed like he'd throw for 420 yards, but the Lions would lose by 14.
Yeah.
Jared Goff feels like the opposite, right? Even the games where it feels like, man, Jared Goff led us to a win there. Like you said, 287 yards. Nobody's really. That was less than what Baker had.
When you look at the Lions franchise stats, you're going to see Matthew Stafford leading every category. But he
who
doesn't
won
have,
a playoff
But
game?
Jared
Bingo.
Goff has a division win and a playoff win, and I feel like that just obliterates
Yeah.
all those meaningless stats. I don't care about any of those stats now. I'm like, oh my gosh, he gave us a division championship. That means more than any stat. And we've never seen that before, and I've never been able to be like, ooh, I value that more because I've never had it on my plate before. So now I want more of that.
Yeah, Goff has accomplished more team-wise in 3 years than Stafford did in 12. So,
Correct.
and I don't think anybody would argue about that.
Yep.
All right, from one controversial figure to another. Campbell also and Goff had some praise for Aaron Glenn.
The amount of hours that he grinds on tape to prepare his players, his coaches, but himself, for what he thinks is going to come and for where he feels like the game's going to go and what he feels like he needs to call in that time relative to what he believes that coordinator's going to call is there's nobody that works harder. There's nobody. And he's got great vision for putting a plan together. He understands football very well. And when you start talking about his leadership, he's one of these guys, he's special. He's special. He's got it, his ability to communicate, to relate, to push, to grind, to love, demand. He's got it all. He's an outstanding communicator. He's an outstanding teacher. And I mean, he just, he is. That's why I say I'm fortunate that he's on staff with me.
So when you look at Aaron Glenn this season, he caught a lot of flack towards the middle part of the season, and some of it deservedly so.
The
Right.
defense was letting a lot of yards.
Yeah, but I think there's sort of this perception in the fan base that losing Ben Johnson is like this really big deal and is really going to hurt the Lions. But if they lose Aaron Glenn, Do you agree with that?
I don't think so. I think we were just talking about this, a lot of the guys make a point to talk about Aaron Glenn when they're at the podium speaking about this team. They love him.
Right.
And there is value in really loving your leader, following what they say. And as you say, like, the talent level is what it is. They bend, but they don't break. And so if that's the case with this leader, then it's working.
Exactly. Would you be worried if the Lions lost Aaron Glenn?
I would, because I feel like the players, he's somebody they really rally around. I mean, you could just tell they love Aaron Glenn, and I like him. He seems like a really good guy. I loved him in Hard Knocks.
On Hard Knocks, yeah.
I'm just like, he seems like a good coach. But yeah, our defense is not elite, and I think he's done a really good job of using what he has. The bend don't break. That's the way you have to play with this defense. You're gonna give up a lot of yards, but they make those winning plays when they need to. I think it's always funny because like every game you have that one wide receiver that's got like 200 yards or whatever. Yeah. And it's a funny strategy for them to just be like, go ahead, let that guy run.
Let him
loose.
eat.
We're gonna shut down everybody else. But it's funny because like there was a play where they baited Baker Mayfield to throw to Evans after leaving him wide open, and I kind of see like they're taking advantage and scheming to like throughout the game, like go ahead, let that guy. We're gonna leave him wide open, but then we're gonna trick you at the very end when it counts, and we're gonna like change up our strategy.
Absolutely.
I love it, and that's really brilliant.
I think Aaron Glenn realized at some point in the season, he does not have a dominant defense, right? Yeah. He doesn't have the personnel to be the 49ers. No. But he did an audit of what he had and how things were going, and he said, the best way that we can be successful is to just make these sort of sell out for these impact plays. The Lions aren't going to force a bunch of 3-and-outs, but they're going to get a sack that ends a drive or turns a red zone appearance into a field goal, or they're going to force a turnover that is just as good as a stop. Do you think that he has done a good job sort of pivoting to that strategy?
For sure. I mean, it's hard to argue that he hasn't, especially when you compare it to those terrible performances we saw in the middle of the season. They made adjustments. Campbell came out and said, AG's going to get this fixed, don't you worry. And we were like, I don't really know if that's true. But he did it. Like, I mean, he's made enough adjustments for them to be in a position to win every time. And every time you give Jared Goff field position like that, like off a turnover or off a sack, and the punt is further away, whatever it may be, he always takes advantage of it.
It really feels like
the offense comes out and scores every time. And so I think the defense, like you said, is playing beautiful complementary football for the offense.
I feel like they had a lot of faith in Aaron Glenn, too, because when things weren't going well, the fan base was like, you need to get someone at the trade deadline. We need another edge rusher to help Aiden Hutchinson. They were like, we're good.
Yeah.
We're not going to give up draft picks right now. We feel like this group of guys is good enough, and aren't they? They're in the NFC Championship.
Exactly. I think there's
my biggest criticism of his is 3rd and 20. 3rd and 26. It's like every time. What is it about 3rd and longs that they can't stop anybody?
Yeah. I think there's this tendency to really chip away at coordinators when they struggle and not give them props when they do things well. Like last year, he was in just as bad of a spot last year as he was this year, and he made the hard choices. He fired Aubrey Pleasant, the DB's coach, and he called up James Houston from the practice squad, a guy who had never played NFL football, 6th-round pick, and the Lions were much better defensively down the stretch. This year, same kind of thing. He realized that you had to start blitzing Melifonwu and doing more with the defensive backs, and I think that Aaron Glenn deserves a little bit more credit, maybe not Ben Johnson level credit, but he's done a nice job making some of these switches.
He's also clearly one of the biggest leaders in that locker room.
Yeah.
So losing him will be a hit. If he ends up somewhere, it'll be a hit to that locker room. But Dan Campbell has shown that he knows exactly the type of guys he wants to bring in for his staff, and so I'd expect that whoever replaces Aaron Glenn is going to have a similar approach to leadership and coaching.
Maybe the person's in house already.
Yeah, totally.
Yep. All right, quickly. Here's what Dan Campbell said about the atmosphere at Ford Field.
This is where we wanted to get it, right? This is where we wanted to go. This is, for all the Lions fans, this was the whole idea, right? And I know it's, everybody been dying for it for so long, but this is the point because of what we just saw in those last 2 playoff games. The environment in there is better than any you're going to find in the NFL. Back-to-back weeks. The eardrums are just banging. The only thing I thought I would get a blown out eardrum, it didn't happen this one. We'll work on that next year. But it was electric, and it was. I brought this up last night. But if you're an opponent, that's tough to play in. But you also walk away going, man, you'll never forget that environment. It's special to play under that kind of duress and stress, and a home crowd that's not your own. So we got something special that we built, all of us together, and I'm talking about the fans with us. So this is just the beginning.
All right, we just found out that the Lions fans somehow broke last week's decibel record, 134.6 this week. So even louder without Stafford, without the first playoff game.
Yeah.
I mean, can you say enough about what the Lions fans do at Ford Field?
No. Short answer.
Yeah.
If you want this quick.
Do you expect to see many Lions fans in San Francisco?
I don't think it's going to be like the road games we've gotten used to this year, but there should be I got some friends in California, and they're making the trip. But
This is
I don't
an
think,
expensive one, man.
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
This is an expensive trip.
But I was in Green Bay, huge blue wave. I was in Kansas City, huge blue wave. I expect another big blue wave. Now, the 49ers are not going to want to give up those tickets
Right.
to Lions fans, and this is the NFC Championship, but I 100% expect those who go to be super loud.
Yeah, and this is the third straight year in the NFC Championship game for the 49ers, so possibly some of those fans holding out for Vegas if they think they can beat the Lions.
Right.
Yeah.
So you never know. I mean, that could help them out. So, and also, the Lions have already sold out all their tickets for the watch party. They were selling the lower bowl
Incredible.
watch party, and it was on sale for like 3 or 4
That's
hours,
crazy.
and then all were gone. So,
just gotta go back.
Have you been to a watch party?
No, I would never do that.
Yeah.
I guess I kind of understand why you'd want to do that, but like, I'd rather watch on my couch.
Yeah, I completely agree. All right, we're going to get to some of the bad news now. The Lions are not coming out of the Tampa Bay game completely healthy. Here's what Campbell said about Jonah Jackson's chances to play if the Lions make it to the Super Bowl.
Hard to say. I mean, I think the timeline could be there. You know, it's just a matter of, you know, how fast this thing heals and what it feels like, but I think there's a possibility, but we'll see.
I'll see Wonka.
All right, I don't think anybody would argue that the Lions have been at their best this season with a fully healthy O-line, and clearly they're not going to have that this weekend. So, like, what concerns do you have most about losing Jonah Jackson?
The protection of Jared Goff, although Decker's going to be there, Ragnow should play through the pain and be there. So, like, the big names are going to be there, and I think the guy who came in, I can't ever say his name,
Coyote, yeah.
did as best as he could. And
Yeah.
Ben Johnson schemed for having him in the lineup instead of Jonah Jackson.
Yeah.
Any part of that O-line missing, it's so deflating because you know how good the Lions are Super Bowl contenders with that line healthy, and you take one piece out of it, and I don't know if they can get there, but man, what a
with
blow.
quicker
Yeah.
passes.
Like,
They
things
can.
Like Jamie said, they held up well after his injury. Where I worry about this is how many times do you see a short pass or a run for the Lions that turns into a 20 or 25-yard run, and you see the replay, and it's Jonah Jackson getting to a block to the second level.
Yeah.
His athleticism and his ability to get downfield turns small, medium gains into big plays, and I think the Lions really could have used a lot of that against the San Francisco defense.
Yeah, who do they have in the middle? San Fran's defense, Hargrave.
Yeah,
and yeah,
Fred Warner. I mean, they got
Yeah.
great
We'll say
linebackers.
though,
so
the Niners didn't get any pressure on Aaron Glenn, on Jordan
Love.
Love last week. So I don't know.
they kind of started to once the game kind of
I don't think
got
they
closer.
ended the game with 0 sacks though. I'm just saying. I think the offensive line can probably hold up.
Yeah.
Frank Ragnow just being there is enough for me. I have full confidence. That man is unbelievable.
Half a toe,
I
half a
don't
leg, he will
understand
be
it.
there.
he didn't even miss a play.
He is like he is incredible.
Does he have 3 toes and 1 butt cheek at this point?
I've lost.
I will beat your.
And did
All
you
right,
hear him, by the way, after the game last week? He was like, I just wanted to earn my contract. I was like, dude, nobody was questioning the money. Trust me. But he was like, I just want to make sure that like I got paid and I want to perform. I want to live up.
If there's one person whose toughness can't be questioned, it's
I'm
Frank
like
right now,
Frank.
right?
I'm like Frank. Relax. We're
3
not-
injuries on every injury practice report. Okay, the other guy that you guys mentioned earlier who they're going to be without, obviously, is Brock Wright. They signed Zach Ertz. They're not sure if he's going to be activated off the practice squad. Do you have any concerns at tight end?
Well, the Lions do, or they wouldn't have signed Zach
Yeah.
Ertz. But this guy has won a Super Bowl. If you can get him in a couple plays to make a play here or there, I think that's worth it. Blocking could be a huge deal. Sam Laporta seems to be playing through pain, and
Yeah.
he's going to be the number one. But yeah, I think it's a little bit of a concern.
Yeah, because he complements Laporta so well.
Right.
He makes 1 catch per game, but it's always a huge catch.
Like 3rd and 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that play that they ran, I recognize that play because that's the same play they ran against the Jets last year when
Yeah.
he made that long run. But he's such a good weapon, and he just flies under the radar. It seems like all game, and then he just comes up with this big play. And man, missing that hip, it's kind of like he's the Khalif Raymond of tight ends. What he brings, what Raymond brings to the
another guy
receivers.
who we just aren't sure if Khalif Raymond is going to play. He's missed the first 2 playoff games. I mean, it'd be big to have him back and maybe flip the field, right?
That would be awesome, man. Yeah, they're still missing. They're missing that long shot because for some reason Jameson Williams is just not getting the throws.
Yeah.
But Khalif, man, he's so reliable. Goff clearly trusts him more than Jameson Williams, and he's also better in special teams. So
But Jameson Williams has come a long way.
He has.
has.
He has.
Jared Goff trusts him enough in big situations, as you saw in the couple previous games. And after what he's been through, he's a young guy. He made a couple mistakes. I'm proud of him.
Yeah.
All right,
He is
we're gonna
open a lot, though.
We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to get to a few fan questions. All right, we asked you guys for some fan questions. We got a ton of them. We narrowed them down to 5. Some of you are still angry, but not everybody. So let's get to the first one here from Tina. Tina says, why does it seem like all of our games are so intense? My neighbor's probably going to call the police on me if I keep yelling at the TV like this. Ben, why are the Lions playing so many close games?
It's because it's our team. And you're so emotionally invested. I was watching there was another close game over the weekend, and I just wasn't into it. And I'm like, it only feels like our games are so intense because we're so attached to this team. We're so hungry. There's really no difference in like the gameplay. Sometimes you see another blowout and you're like, why can't we just get the easy layup like other teams? But sometimes, I mean, it felt like the Bucs game wasn't as close as the score really reflected.
Dude, my question is, what's the neighbor doing? Put the game on.
Yeah, Tina, your neighbor is
What are you
yelling
doing?
way too loud to hear you yelling, right?
Yeah.
Kidding
I
me?
think the Lions games have felt so intense because the Lions aren't a dominant team. Their defense is going to make some plays, but also going to give up some long touchdown drives. So this isn't a team that's
It's the
gonna blow
playoff,
everybody
baby.
out. Yeah,
Come on.
exactly. Everybody's good.
I mean,
Everybody.
we're so hungry. That,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm starving right now.
Yell at your TV and don't worry about it, Tina. All right, Martell wants to know, what changes will the Lions defense make in preparation for the 49ers next week? Ken?
Well, I think that they're facing an inferior quarterback, and so I think they just got to focus on shutting down Christian McCaffrey. I don't think Brock Purdy's really going to beat them, especially if Debo's out. It's all Christian McCaffrey all day. Focus everything on that guy, and you might have some success.
I think the Lions finally bring back a secret weapon that they've been getting ready for this game. I think James Houston comes back, plays, and records 2 sacks.
Wow, 2 sacks.
I'm calling it.
I think the Lions defense is preparing for an opposite quarterback this week. Last week you had Baker Mayfield, who's a guy who's going to make a huge play and also a backbreaking mistake. This week you've got a guy who's very steady. You know what you're going to get from him, and he's probably not going to give you that big mistake. So, like Ken said, Christian McCaffrey, the key there is wrap up. Lions linebackers are going to be very important in this game. You cannot miss a tackle against Christian McCaffrey because he might take it 75 yards on that play, and you just can't afford to do that. So, wrap up Christian McCaffrey and contain Brock Purdy, and you'll be okay. Doug wants to know, do the Lions have a viable shot at beating San Francisco on the road with that hot and cold defense? Ken, they got a shot, right?
For sure. You make it to this stage, you have a shot. I mean, why wouldn't you have a shot? Come on, it's the NFC Championship.
Come on,
you
Doug.
didn't just walk in there.
Yeah,
You beat a bunch of good teams.
And
It's-
people,
it's
there's
there.
just something special about this team. They've got the magic going, and that doesn't show up on paper when you're looking at the matchup between us and San Francisco. But I'm telling you, there is something magical going on with the Lions. This is our year, and I can see there's a pathway to beat San Francisco and get there, and I can see him doing it. They're going to do it.
Doug, you asked if they can win with a hot and cold D. The answer is yes, because it could be hot, right? If the Lions force a couple turnovers, get a couple sacks, they're going to be just okay. If it's cold, yeah, you're probably right. They probably won't win. Also, Debo Samuel, status up in the air, that is a big factor in this game because if the Lions don't have to deal with him and Ayuk and Kittle, that would make a big difference. So pay attention to what the 49ers say about Debo this week. All right, Richard wants to know who can replace Vildor and Sutton as quarterbacks.
Me and Ben. Me and Ben are going to suit up this weekend, and we'll probably do just as well as Cam Sutton has done for the last month. Maybe Ben makes one extra stop, but I think we'll be all right.
Oh, man. It's been tough on them, but, it starts up front. They need some help. We need to generate some more pressure, and it'll make those guys look a lot better. Maybe Houston helps with that, but they got to play better.
Richard, there's nobody. If there was somebody, he'd be out there. Do we really want to do the Jerry Jacobs thing again? I don't think we do. All right, lastly, Jason, don't you think this game should be in Detroit considering what happened in Dallas? What Jason is saying is, if the Lions win that game in Dallas, they're 13-4, obviously, technically the 1 seed. Ken?
No, we're done with this. We don't know what would have happened, okay? The outcomes would have changed. Stop. Enough of this. We already got our karma on Dallas. They lost. Got our second home game. Time to move on. This was always gonna be the road.
Exactly that. This was the way it was always going to play out no matter what.
Jason, if we would have beaten Dallas, the 49ers would have won their final game against the Rams. They sat everybody and still only lost that game by 1 point. So the only difference is the Lions would have been the 2 seed and would have had to play the Packers instead of the Rams. I don't think we want to change anything that's already happened.
No.
We beat Stafford. Dak Prescott has been on the golf course for 2 weeks. So think about that and smile. All right, that's all our fan questions. So we're going to toss it back to Christy.
I love the fan questions segment. Now I want them like live by Zoom. I think that's a totally next question to Doug, Richard, everyone who's watching the Kool-Aid Corner. Hey, so Derek, like, what's the list of things that you have to write about this week? Is it long? Do you wake up in the middle of the night and just jot down I want to write about this?
Well, it's so fun writing about all these lines first, right? It's the first time that fans are being rewarded. You go back and right now I'm looking at Dan Campbell's introductory press conference, which we're going to talk about tomorrow. It was 3 years to the date of the game, and he's saying all this stuff, and at the time it sounded crazy, and now we're like, oh yeah, he came here and did that. So, it's really fun to look at it from a big picture standpoint, and then obviously as we get closer to the game, we dive into this actual game. Can the Lions actually do this thing and beat the 49ers and go to the Super Bowl?
I love it. I love it. The coverage has been awesome. The Lions Kool-Aid Corner is my favorite thing that's been going on Local 4 Plus. So thanks, guys, and we'll check back in with you tomorrow. Okay, stay with us here on Local 4 Plus. Coming up, we are going to be following the preliminary examination in the death of Samantha Wall. Remember, she was a Jewish community leader who was killed back in October. The person who is now been charged with her death, that preliminary exam is going to be continuing this afternoon in Detroit. We're going to bring that to you streaming here. So stay with us on Local 4 Plus.